Hi, I'm Courtney. This is Something Positive for Positive People. Today I have Melanie with me. Melanie, go on and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Melanie from the Midwest. I am a 43-year-old Caucasian cis female. I am a single mom of a 10-year-old, and I am a bisexual, polyamorous person, and I am in the healthcare field.
Okay. And what is your condition?
I was diagnosed with HSV2.
Okay. Now, there's a little bit of a backstory there. So, you weren't always diagnosed with HSV2, right?
That's correct. That's
So,
When I was initially diagnosed, it was with a test that did not distinguish between HSV1 and HSV2. And because my symptoms are only cold sores and in my nose, they told me that it was HSV1, and I was fine. Everybody has HSV1, so not to worry about it. And then years later, I was diagnosed with HSV2 and found out I didn't have HSV1 to start with.
all right.
So I do have HSV2 oral.
So, now when you say everyone has HSV1, can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Um, what my doctors had told me was that the statistics showed that a large portion of the population has HSV1, whether they know about it or not.
Okay.
That's a lot of times we'll call them fever blisters, or they may have some tingling, but cold sores are pretty common.
So, your medical health care professionals told you a lot of people have herpes, basically.
And
Or
not to worry about it.
Okay. Now, so you were misdiagnosed. Well, I'm sorry. You were diagnosed with HSV1 because it was orally. When did you find out that it wasn't HSV1 and that it was HSV2 orally?
I had disclosed to partners that I had HSV1, and after a breakup, one of my partners had come back to me and told me that he was diagnosed with HSV2 and that I needed to get tested. And this time when I was tested, they did the separate testing that separated one and two, and it came back as the HSV2. And so it turned out that I had given him HSV2 without realizing that I had it.
Okay. Now, when you were diagnosed this time, did you ask any questions? Because you were diagnosed HSV1 and then you find out HSV2. I'm sure you had a lot of questions for the doctors at that point.
I did. I went online and tried to come up with as much information as I could so I could go into my doctor's office well armed with everything I needed to know. At the time, I had just come out as bisexual. I had just started some polyamorous relationships. And at that point, I had 5 people that I had to disclose this to get tested. And thankfully, they all came back negative just so that our relationship wasn't this strained aspect due to the stigma attached to it.
Right.
And I'm still good friends with all of them because I was able to disclose right away that, hey, this happened. And they were all very supportive.
So
And
initially, did they only think you had HSV1?
yes,
Okay, so you were able to go back to them, all 5 partners. You disclosed to 5 people at one time. How did that feel?
that was absolutely horrible.
Uh,
I felt at that point that they would no longer want to talk to me because I had exposed them to an STD. Um, it was all new to me. I hadn't really dealt with any of this before. And the one woman, she is my best friend, and she said, no, that it's okay. We'll get tested. Everything's fine. Her husband got tested as well. Everything was fine. Um, I had been with a couple. They both got tested. Everything was fine. I'm still friends with all of them. But the boyfriend that I had at the time, he basically ghosted me. As soon
oh.
as I told him, he said, okay, let's not make a big deal out of it. I'll get tested and we'll talk. And then he never spoke to me again.
So you were like 4 out of 5. That's not bad for your first disclosure.
It wasn't
Your
bad, but
first
having
set.
disclosed HSV1 to start with, it wasn't quite as bad.
Right.
Have a cold sore at the time, time, so their chance of exposure was more limited.
Mm-hmm.
But at that point in time, because it is the HSV2 oral, my brain went to horrible places of I can never kiss anyone again. I
Oh.
can't kiss my son. Oh my gosh, I gave it to my son. I kiss my son. Oh my gosh, how do I go to my son's doctor and say, can you test my 10-year-old for an STD?
Yeah.
All
So.
of these things running through my head. And when I went to my doctor with a notepad full of questions, pretty much they didn't answer them in a way that I felt was sufficient. And so then I went online and I joined every group I could find.
Mm-hmm.
The Missouri group, the Positive Singles online. I went to the Acceptance or the Accept Project. Everywhere that I could go to get information.
Right.
Because my doctor was not up to date on important things that I needed to know.
So, what information did they give you in relation to HSV1 versus HSV2? Because the reason I'm asking this is because, all right, your partners were completely fine with you having HSV1, but then when you go, oh, it's number 2, they're like, oh no, I'm not dealing with that. Or the one, your boyfriend then was like, oh no, I'm not dealing with that. No way. Like, you've got HSV2, I can do 1, but 2, no way.
Right, and I think, again, because that stigma attached to type 2 for anything that is related to genital aspects, that scares everyone. But, oh, a little cold sore, I can see that. Nope, you don't have any. Everything is fine. And so many people know people who have cold sores, so it's not as big an issue there. My doctor told me that it didn't matter whether it was type 1 or type 2. She said that because of changes, and I laughed at that because sexual activities really haven't changed that much. We're just more vocal about it. But because of oral sex, that HSV1 can now be genital HSV1 and HSV2 can be oral instead of just genital. And so it doesn't matter where you have it. It can be type 1 or type 2, and it spreads the same way.
Okay, so if anyone has let's just run this through. So if I have a blister on my mouth and I perform oral on someone, they can now have whatever type it is that I've been diagnosed with on their genital area. And if I perform if I perform oral on someone who has the genital version and they are having an outbreak, I can contract it orally, and it's just like it goes to where the uninfected area is. Now, if I'm doing anything with my hands, like if I'm masturbating a woman or whatever, am I gonna get it on my hand? And if I do that and touch myself, am I gonna get it on my penis?
Right, and that's what I understood, is that's
Mm-hmm.
why with barrier methods, dental dams, gloves, condoms,
No glove, no
that's
love.
that any bodily fluids and mucous membranes, it can pass that way.
Okay,
And
so
that's why I also had gotten it in my nose, because when I had a cold sore, I had transferred it to my nose, and it was actually more severe in my nose than it was for my cold sores.
all right, so a lot of the information that I've received and commonly have discussed has been more that it's skin on skin contact and that it's not in any of the fluids. It's the skin on skin contact. Are you saying that your medical professionals and research have told you that it also can be contracted through fluids?
It wasn't necessarily the fluids, it was just that mucous membranes tend to have fluids near them.
Okay.
So that was the aspect for fluids.
Okay, so what you mean is like if I have, let's say I'm having an outbreak, and there's just like I don't know what the best way is of describing this. Can you elaborate a little bit? So let's say, walk me through
If
an
I'm
outbreak.
having a cold sore that is an active outbreak and it has drainage coming from it, that would be a bodily fluid, and then that could transmit to another partner.
Okay, so you having an outbreak and you have a runny nose and that that's what could be spread. So let's say you sneeze, don't cover your nose, and
the chances of that would be slim to none.
Okay. All right. I want to make sure anyone who's listening, because this is new to me, hearing about outbreaks in the nose, because I'm familiar with HSV2 being genital. I have it genitally. I haven't had anything come up orally at all, and with previous partners that I've had, none of them have contracted anything orally or genitally, as far as I know, from just being in contact with them still. So this one in particular is new to me because it's in the nose, and I had
Right.
no idea
That
that that was
blew
even a
my
thing.
mind. I just knew that I went to my doctor, and this was a different doctor,
Mm.
and I said I have this sore spot in my nose and it won't go away. And he asked, "Do you get cold sores?" I said, "Yes." And he goes, "Well, that's the exact same thing. You just have it in your nose."
Oh wow. Okay.
So,
All right. So my next question for you is, how long have you been diagnosed?
officially diagnosed about 16 months.
Okay. Now, when did you first get diagnosed? When you were misdiagnosed for HSV1?
This diagnosed was back in 2012.
Okay, so when you got your misdiagnosis, you went through life like, oh, it's okay, it's fine, everybody has it. You disclosed to everyone. When you were diagnosed that time, how did you respond to it?
I didn't really think too much of it. Again, I had had cold sores for so long, I honestly don't remember when I first started having them. It could have been as a child. Um, my family kissed on the lips, whether it was aunts, uncles, cousins, parents, everyone kissed on the lips, and it can spread that way. If somebody that in my family had an outbreak, it could have passed that way. Um, Previous partners who had cold sores, it could have passed that way. Through oral sex, it could have passed. I really just don't know.
Okay, so you have no idea how you contracted it. So going through life, it was just like, well, I mean, everyone has it at that point,
Cold
and
sores are cold sores.
yeah.
It wasn't even something that it was, oh, you have herpes. It
Mhm.
was, you have a cold sore.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So, I mean, now what we're saying here is that cold sores and herpes are the same thing. It's just when it's funny because the use of the words are have completely different interpretation. So if I say
Exactly.
cold sore, oh, it's okay. If nothing's on your lips, you're fine. Like we can do whatever it is that we're gonna do. But if I were to say, yeah, I have herpes orally, like it's like, ew, you what? And even someone with cold sores on their mouth would judge you for having herpes, even though they're one and the same.
Right.
So all right, you're going through life, you're telling people, I have cold sores, and they're like, okay, did you deal with many rejections at all?
None.
None?
That with
And
with the cold sores,
uh-huh.
none.
All
That's
right.
HSV1, not a single rejection.
Okay. And then here we go, 16 months ago, and your life just completely changes. You find out now, oh shit, I have HSV2. So you get HSV2, and what's your response at that point?
At that point, I felt like a walking petri dish.
What?
Yeah, I did. I just felt like my dating life was over
Mm-hmm.
there because, okay, the biggest thing that freaked me out was asymptomatic shedding.
Okay.
That terminology right there, that you have no idea when you actually are actively shedding the virus, even if you have no symptoms, freaked me the hell out.
Yeah.
I was a basket case. I had panic attacks. I couldn't sleep at night. I was a mess.
That's so
Because
crazy.
I thought I was walking around, and anybody that I got close to, I was just going to actively just shut it every which direction.
Yeah.
And until I got more information, that is how I felt about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got educated.
There you go.
I went to my therapist, and I had already hit her with a lot of other stuff, and then I go, and now there's this. And I spent a lot of time crying and thinking that, just like most people have when they first get diagnosed, that my life is over, my dating life is over. How am I going to deal with this?
I'm gonna be alone forever. No one's gonna want me.
They don't love me anymore. Yeah, all of the things that go through your head that rationally, you can go through and tell yourself, well, if that many people have it, and even the number of people who they say have HSV2 have it, well, not everybody's alone.
Right.
And you can find people within that community, and there shouldn't be any issue. But the rational part of your brain isn't working when that first
Oh
diagnosis
no,
comes to you.
not at all. So you felt gross, you felt like a walking petri dish, like everyone around you was gonna get it as well. How long did that go on? Like how long before you just snapped out of it and were like, okay, I'm in therapy, I have good people around me now that your boyfriend ghosted you? Because I feel like when you disclose some very personal information about yourself to someone and the way that they respond to it really lets you know what their intentions are. You tell your boyfriend, and what's his response?
He was very nonchalant of, well, let's not make too much out of this. Let me get tested, and then we'll talk. I don't like drama. And then he never talked to me again.
Wow, talk about avoiding drama, I guess. And of course, you felt sad, alone.
I felt panicky. I felt rejected. I felt that I would never have a personal life again.
And how long were
That
you two together?
literally a month.
Oh, okay. So he was just
One
like,
month.
it's been early. I can get out of this.
Exactly. And hindsight, I don't blame him. Of
Hmm.
course, that we didn't have that much going on yet. If we would have been together longer, it would have hurt more. But I think it was just that instant rejection on top of the new diagnosis that just cemented everything in my head that I'd been telling myself.
It's so shocking to me that your circle was so accepting of HSV1, but the second you get HSV2, that all goes out the window. Like that, I know I mentioned this earlier, but that is shocking to me.
Right, and there are 8 different types of human type herpes,
Hmm.
and the only one that people freak out about so much is type 2, and specifically genital. If you have chicken pox, oh, kids get chicken pox. That's, you don't want to be around them to get it, but that happens. No big
Hmm.
deal. There's no stigma with chicken pox. And no
Everybody,
stigma.
everybody gets it. Yeah, that's the stigma. Everyone gets chicken pox. So imagine if we just switched chicken pox out with herpes. Like, then what? Everybody gets it.
Right. So it just really amazed me that with that many different types of herpes, that this is the only kind that gets that stigma attached.
Hmm. Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure there are people out there with HSV1 who just didn't have the fortune that you've had in your disclosing process. So far, everyone I've interviewed, I believe, has had HSV2. So this one's new to me as well. Okay, so you get ghosted by your boyfriend. You tell your I don't want to say the wrong thing. So is it like your other partners? Is it your
Yeah.
polyamory? Like, what
Other
would we?
partners.
Okay, so your other partners and everyone else is rather accepting. They're at least involved with you in some form or fashion. Did you stop becoming involved sexually with them?
We did, yes.
Hmm.
And it was on both our ends. I didn't want to take the risk now that I knew, and they also didn't want to take the risk of passing it to their other partners.
Got it. Got it. Okay. And so that happens. Now you're cut off from sex, I guess.
Right.
And now what? Now what do you do now?
Um, so when I told my therapist about it, she had said, there's a lot of dating sites that are specifically for people with STDs. That would be a good way to get back into the dating scene in a way that's more comfortable, because everyone has to disclose something on those sites because that's why they're there. And I joined up on Positive Singles, and pretty shortly thereafter, I met someone, and we hit it off beautifully. And so almost overnight, I went from, this is a death sentence and I am forever going to be ousted socially and sexually, to, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, I have a chance at love.
Yeah, you know what I got. Ooh, that worked.
Oh man. All right. So the recovery process really just started for you in therapy. And once you realized you weren't alone and that you had access to others who also had your condition, you were fine.
I was okay. I still had some issues though, because what if I wanted to date someone that didn't have it?
Mm-hmm.
Then what? And the safety precautions and so forth that needed to be made. Um, and at that point, I decided to be more open about it. I had just, like I said, I had just come out as bisexual, and so I was talking to people about this, and I'm like, oh, what's one more thing on top of that? So I took the approach of, we were already talking about how hard it is to date. Oh, it's so hard to find somebody to date. And I would just casually bring it up that, well, it's a little bit more so for me because I have HSV too.
So you kind
And
of opened up the dating pool a little bit by dating men and women, and then you
I
just narrow it back down with having HSV too. Like, okay, I date men and women. Everybody's like, yay! Now you're like, but I have genital herpes. Oh.
yeah, to know. Uh, yeah, so that was very, eye-opening to me of how am I going to communicate this without. So I had talked to a lot of people online, and their experiences with disclosure were, well, I wait until there's going to be possible sex with this person, or I wait until the third date, I wait until now. For me, having HSV2 oral, I couldn't even kiss someone goodnight without thinking, again, that whole asymptomatic shedding.
Mm-hmm.
Where do I go from here? So I finally started, like I said, just disclosing before it was even a possibility out on the table. And then if they weren't interested, we didn't even go down that route.
Right.
But when I met one of my current girlfriends, when I talked to her online, we weren't even talking about dating yet. And I just said, yep, trying to find someone to date is difficult. And she agreed. And I said, yep, it's a little bit harder because I have HSV too. She goes, oh, that has to suck. Okay. And then we just dropped it because it didn't have anything else to do with our conversation. And then later on when we met in real life, we talked more about it, and she's like, well, I get cold sores too, so probably no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but still wanted to protect each other, so we didn't know, I was like, oh, I don't want to collect the set.
Yeah.
I already have HSV2, I don't want HSV1. Now, all this time later, I go, technically it is the same thing. I really don't care at this point. And I date people who have HSV1, HSV2, or don't have either of them.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I still kind of draw the dating line at other STDs because, like I said, I don't want to collect the whole set. So I'm stopping with that. They're the same family.
Yeah. All right. So, how, if at all, has herpes impacted your day-to-day life? Like outside of just dating, do you feel any different? Does it make you act any different, or what?
It has. That's just in the generic sense. I started taking the daily Valtrex generic, just so that gave me peace of mind that I wasn't going to spread it through the asymptomatic shedding. Even if that was unlikely, that gave me that extra feeling of security that now I've taken every precaution I can, and I'm going to protect the people that I care about. So my regimen is I now take a daily medication because of it. I also use the Abreva whenever I get a cold sore, and it works beautifully. Whenever I donate blood or platelets, I tell them that I'm taking a medication for an infection. No, it's not active, but I have to disclose.
Yeah.
In my everyday life, it has really made a positive impact, which seems so crazy now, looking back. But I have become much more open with communication with people, whether it's with friends, with family, with partners. If you have to disclose something as intimate as an STD or STI, however people like to refer to them, infection, disease, but having to disclose that, I'm much more able to talk about things that are difficult.
Yeah.
and really have that open dialogue that is really important in relationships. And I didn't have that as well before.
Yeah, I never thought about that because it's been the same thing with me. When I communicate with people who know that I have HSV2 genitally, however, those people I'm able to more so open up to and communicate with on a much deeper level. And it's almost effortless communication, to say the least. Whereas, on a first date or something like that, I do personally feel like I'm hiding something. If it's someone that I'm dating or interested in outside of um, the, I don't know, STD community. It just sounds weird, STD community. uh, but when you're dating someone who doesn't know that they don't have, I don't know, that thinks they don't have an STD, however you'd word it, someone who hasn't been diagnosed, um, I'm not the same person, and I've noticed that. And so doing this and speaking with other people and hosting this podcast has really helped me in realizing, wow, maybe if I'm a little bit more open about my life, and a little more transparent, like, yeah, I have herpes, then that's something that will help me, as you just said, effortlessly more so communicate. And I didn't think about it until you just said it just now, but like that's exactly what's happening. And I'm so happy that you were willing to come on here and effortlessly communicate with the world on this podcast and share your story as well. So thank you so much, Melanie.
Oh, my pleasure.
Last thing. So in hindsight, if you were able to go back to 16 months ago and talk to your then self, what advice would you give just to like let yourself know, hey, it'll be okay, and allow you to bounce back and recover quicker from that state of, oh my God, I'm going to be alone forever. I'm a walking petri dish.
Right. I think I would really just tell myself, just as everything else in my life, be rational about this.
Mm-hmm.
We lose ourselves in emotion when we're scared about something. And if we educate ourselves and then we're able to communicate clearly with others, so when I educated myself about what symptoms were, what the likelihood of being able to spread it to another partner, if I would have known then what I know now, I would realize that by talking to them and communicating and letting everyone know that it's not as big a deal as what I was making it out to be, that I think we can start to reduce the stigma that's attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think at that point, if I thought about it and researched, and there's so many good resources for us to get real information, not just coincidental, oh, this is what I have, and oh, you hear all these horrible things and you see these horrible pictures online.
Oh, those are the worst.
Real sources of information.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your personal experience. Right now, at this point in life, you seem to be pretty happy, content with everything. It's like, let's talk a little bit about how normal your life is, where you are right now.
Where I'm at right now is I have a normal work life. It doesn't interfere with that. I have a normal life with my son, and I have a very active social life, and I'm dating several people, and
Everyone you're dating, are you? Oh, go ahead.
Don't.
So some have. I'm sorry, would you kind of cut out there? You said some have
sorry.
HSV2 and some don't.
Right. My partners have. Some do have HSV2,
Mm-hmm.
some have HSV1, and some don't have either.
Okay.
And everybody went into the relationship with me fully knowing what the risks were, what we need to do to protect them, and to protect their other partners.
Yeah. You know what? I find that I'm in conversations now with quite a few people who are very open sexually, who do have HSV, just in conversations that I've been having, and I'm wondering if I should do some sort of episode. Would you be willing to like discuss how your dating life is on a separate episode, of course, like how your polyamorous dating life is having an STD? I spoke with Hannah on a recent episode, and she kind of got into that, but it was very broad. So we talked about her sexuality, her kink life, but we didn't really touch on polyamory and dating. So would you be open to that?
Certainly, I could relate to Hannah quite a bit when I listen to that podcast because I'm also in the community.
Yeah.
So
Wait,
we
you're
have
in the
our
lifestyle book club?
lifestyle. Yeah, it's not the club. So yeah, that's all these different things: bisexuality, polyamorous, lifestyle,
Yeah.
and HSV too. Put it all together.
All right, awesome. So this is going to conclude our interview. I'm still working on an outro, but one day that'll get done. So follow me on Instagram and Twitter at H on my chest. I am still looking for interviews, people to interview and come on and share their story. If you're interested, please direct message me, or you can shoot me an email at Courtney, COURTNEY, WBRAME, BRAME, at gmail.com. Again, that's just Courtney W. Brame at gmail.com. And if you hear this, please like, comment, share, subscribe to the YouTube channel for now. One day it'll be a podcast. I promise. I'm working on it. It's just taking a while, just having so many things going on, and I really want to get these interviews done so that I can produce the content or edit the content and get it out to you guys as fast as possible. Anyone who's involved with any sort of local communities or groups, if you have, please get this to the newly diagnosed people. If there's anyone who's kind of in a funk or you think could listen or benefit from listening to this, if they can relate, then please share it with them as well. So this concludes Something Positive for Positive People with Melanie. Hey, Granny. My roommate just got here. Melanie, you can go on and say bye.
All right, thank you for interviewing me today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. You have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.